Hello, hi again, it's me, as though if you didn't expect, I guess. Well, what are we going to look at now? We're going to look at the topic of cross-selling. So, first of all, let's clarify what exactly is cross-selling, because it doesn't always translate into various languages. Cross-selling means when you have an existing client that you offer them another product or service. A nice example of this would be if you are ever going to McDonald's and you wanted a hamburger, they cross-sell like mad. So they would say, would you like some chips? Do you want ketchup? Do you want an ice cream? Do you want a soda? You know, they cross-sell a lot. The same way, I find it extremely frustrating. I fly literally once or twice a day during the week. I'm working with law firms in all different countries. And unfortunately, I have to use a lot of different airlines, especially budget airlines. And although they're cheap, it's very frustrating when you're trying just to buy the ticket, because they won't let you buy the ticket. They say, do you want to take on luggage? Do you want ski equipment? Do you want some food? Do you want to book a menu on it in advance? Would you like to book your seat? And you have to go click and click and click to get through all of their rubbish just to buy the ticket. The reason they are doing this, it's cross-selling. They are selling you other products to accompany the main product, the main service. So in the legal world, cross-selling is a huge opportunity. It's absolutely massive. But the amazing thing is that from, how many law firms have I met now? About law firms that I've met in different countries. I was saying not one of them is good in cross-selling. In fact, most law firms are atrocious, terrible, awful when it comes to cross-selling. A lot of law firms are not doing any cross-selling. You know, it's unbelievable. So this means that a typical law firm has a relationship with the client, which is one lawyer in one practice, working with one client in one jurisdiction. And that's it. This is unbelievable because, as we know, according to the iceberg model, clients have a lot more needs than they are telling us about. And they have a lot of needs in different practice groups. So if you're only focusing on your own little area of legal expertise, and that's all that we are doing to help the client, then to be honest, you're not doing the client the best service, because there are lots of things we should be and could be helping them with. I think this comes down to the concept of this misconception called it's unethical to sell misconception. And sometimes lawyers say to me, it's not my job to sell. I'll just do good legal work in my practice. And I'm not going to propose anything. It's unethical. And I think that's absolutely stupid, totally stupid. It is not unethical to sell. If you're helping the client, let's say, in corporate law, because you're a corporate lawyer, and you become aware that there have been some recent changes to tax law, and the client doesn't know about these, even though you're not a tax lawyer, you have friends in your law firm who are tax lawyers. You have a moral and ethical obligation to let your client know that these things have happened, that there is this new tax thing that's happening. You are obliged to try and cross-sell to the client. Make them aware, make them interested. Try and introduce your friend from the tax department. Maybe one of the best ways that you could do this would be called T for 3. T for 3 is probably the best type of cross-selling that I can think of. You invite your client to tea. You invite them to lunch. And yes, that means you are paying. And you tell your client, I'd love to introduce you to my good friend so-and-so from the tax department. And because they're really good in tax, and they can tell you about new things in tax that is happening, if you have good social equity and good relationship with your client, and you propose your initiative to introduce one of your colleagues at tea, then they'll probably agree. It's very important that you don't underestimate the value of tea marketing. Tea for 3. Yes, it should be over food. It should be quasi-social. Make people relax and more open and friendly. So it shouldn't be in the office ideally, That's why it's tea for three, and it is in person. A lot of lawyers, when it comes to cross-selling, they're going to do the most stupid primitive thing, which is doing email and say, I CC my colleague in tax, he can help you if you have tax questions. I mean, okay, fair enough. That's better than nothing, I suppose. But email is the worst sales channel that exists. The best thing that you can do is the face-to-face meeting. So, be proactive. Try for tea for three. Strangely, the more we can help a client, the more relations we have with the client, the happier the client is going to be. Because a satisfied client is okay. He's not going to tell many of his friends about us. But if we become irreplaceable, that we are helping the client in tax and corporate and IP and this and this and this, then you're going to be offering so much value to the client. You're going to be irreplaceable. Client attention is going to be very high, and client satisfaction is going to be very high. The client might become, the terminology is called a raving fan. A raving fan is a client who absolutely loves you and who'll do everything in sales marketing to help you and advertise you, to tell their friends about you. They'll even give you citations for ratings if you ask them nicely. The opposite of a raving fan, however, is called a wrecker. And you have to be careful here. A wrecker is a client who actually hates you, doesn't like your company at all. And sometimes it happens, sometimes we mess up. There were some problems, some misunderstandings in invoicing. Somebody made a mistake. Wreckers are very infrequent, but they talk a lot. A wrecker is going to tell 10 of their friends how bad you are as a law firm in all of this. A satisfied client would tell maybe 1 or 2 friends about your firm, and a raving fan, maybe they tell 1 or 2. It's very easy to get bad publicity. So that's not a reason to be doing cross-selling. You don't want your relationship to a client to depend on a relationship with one person, because sometimes people fall out. Sometimes it's not chemistry. Sometimes you make mistakes and things change. So by doing more cross-selling, you increase client retention and you can move them for what's been a raving fan. In fact, if you don't do proactive cross-selling, like a T for 3, then you might find yourself in a practice which is only dealing with transactional clients, which means the client comes, they do their thing, we help them, and they go. That's it. That would be M&A. That would be litigation. Our job is to increase the stability and the cash flow. The future opportunities for the law firm is to convert transactional clients into relationship clients. Because if you don't, your client is going to fall off the client relationship cliff. Which means we have intense relations to the client, building intensity and communication, building up our social skill, our goodwill, our communication, until there is the closing and they pay the invoice, and then we drop them and move on to another client. The client falls off the cliff. You really don't want this to happen. You need to retain the clients, especially from M&A or litigation, which means you have to do post-closing sushi. Post-closing sushi sounds nice. It doesn't have to be sushi, of course, but it means that you should be doing something within 1 or 2 weeks of closing. You need to be quick, literally 1 or 2 weeks after the client still is happy and remembers with gratitude and good humor the assistance that you gave them. And you propose having a post-closing meeting, a dinner, post-closing sushi, and introduce one of your friends. So you do T for 3 to prevent the transactional client from M&A or litigation, especially from falling off the client relationship cliff. Fair enough, we can't retain the transactional client in the area of M&A or in litigation because the merger has been done and the case has been won, whatever. But you can retain them for the law firm if you introduce them, especially to somebody, let's say, from labor law or corporate law or tax law. I'm not saying this is easy, but to be honest, what I'm seeing is most law firms around Europe, they have zero systematic policy for post-closing sushi. Most law firms are not doing it at all, and a few that are doing it very badly and sporadically. Quite often, this is left up to the initiative of a partner, which means a lot of partners simply get swamped with work and forget about it because they're too busy. Crazy. Most law firms are not measuring client turnover. You really should pay attention to how many clients we had at the start of the year. And if that list has changed 6 months later, you should recontact them quickly to try and retain them. If you find that you have a litigation department where your percent client turnover year on year is high, that's kind of dumb. You should really try and be doing introduction, cross-selling to retain those clients. And they do. They have a lot of other needs that we could be helping them with. So cross-selling is a good idea. But when I think about why cross-selling, although it is so valuable with such a big potential, why it's not happening with law firms, there are many reasons for this. And one of them is the dreaded possession mentality. Possession mentality is when a lawyer or a partner thinks, it's my client. They are very possessive and they don't want to share the client with somebody else. This could be for very good reasons. They could think that they have such high quality work that they don't want to risk that the lower quality work of some qualities might upset the client. So maybe they're being a little bit, shall we say, overprotective. It might be not for good reasons. It might be for fear of competition. So if I am a real estate partner, and this is a real estate client, do I want the other real estate partner to also work with them? Because where is the money going to? Who's going to get the bonus? What happens if the client likes them more than me? Can I lose my client? So in my experience, strangely enough, the bigger the law firm, the bigger the money, the worse possession mentality becomes, and the greater the conflict becomes. So you really need to have a systematic approach to launching proactive cross-selling, because if you don't, you're going to have some people who don't want to cross-sell and who will protect the clients and think of them as their clients. And you very nicely have to make it clear to them it's not their clients, it's the clients of the firm. No single lawyer can be the one and only solution to all of the legal needs for a client. So you need to have some other lawyers helping the client in other areas. One way to do this is to think in terms of, well, there are a couple of instruments which we can do. One of them is called a cross-sell grid, and the other is called coin analysis. So let's begin with the cross-sell grid. First of all, keep in mind, most law firms don't do regular business development meetings at all. So you've got to start doing that. Once a month, for an hour, you bring together all of the partners, maybe some lawyers, and you talk about business development. Very simple. Who's done more and what are they going to do? That's the foundation. Secondly, moving further, you need to take a systematic approach to cross-selling. And one way to do this is in your business development meeting. You make a cross-sell grid. You make a vertical list of our top 10 clients in terms of revenue, and you make a horizontal list of the number of practices we have representing by one lawyer or partner. And then we fill in the grid. We ask each partner or lawyer responsible for the client on a scale of 1 to 5, what is the chance that the other partner or lawyer from another practice could help them? That could be a client need. If it's 1, it's not a very much chance. If it's a 5, it's a very high chance. So together we go through this grid, and maybe it's to some companies, maybe it's to lawyers. It's not too many. And you have to be quite quick with this. We fill in the grid and we get lots of 1s and 2s, and we're very disappointed. But you will find that by doing the cross-sell grid, it helps overcome possession mentality, because people are kind of peer pressured to participate, and you can't be talking negative all the time. And it encourages cooperation, communication. A lot of cross-selling is simply not happening because lawyers don't know that we're even working with such a client. So the cross-sell grid helps us communicate. And you will find hidden gems that by doing the cross-sell grid, and there are a few 4 or 5s. And in this case, after we do the cross-sell grid for those 4s or 5s, the lawyer or partner responsible for the client then follows up with a T for 3 with the client to introduce the other colleague. Very simple. If you did this on a regular basis, you would get such a lot of work. And it isn't actually usually, it's not in the area of new client hunting. This is consolidation. This is strengthening your relationship with existing clients, which is very valuable. It's very profitable as well. I would predict that you could have conversion from such T for 3, 30, 40, 50% plus, entirely possible. So there's a good element to include in your regular business development meeting, the cross-sell grid. Coin analysis is another type of instrument that we can do in business development regarding cross-selling. In this case, you make a vertical list. You do this individually, not as a team. You simply make a list of your current clients that you're working with. And a typical lawyer is working with maybe, 4 or 5 clients. And you put 2 columns. One column is the past, and the other column is the future. And you ask yourself the very broad question, how can we help them? How can we help them? So this covers anything, cross-selling our services, reselling more services, upselling more premium services. So you brainstorm and you think about the past opportunities. So when people who worked with them in the past and identified something that could be useful to pitch them further. And future opportunities. Future opportunities come in 2 flavors. It's either there's going to be future opportunities based on your knowledge of the company's plans for the future, or on what's happening in your jurisdiction in the future. So you should know for next year what the company wants to do, and you should know what's going to be happening in your country next year on the European level if you're in the EU. So we fill in the coin analysis table. It's called coin analysis because if you have a transactional client, it's like getting 1 coin. You want to change 1 coin from a transactional client into a revenue stream, a line of coins, every month to get a coin. So the coin has 2 faces. One is the past opportunities, which we know we can come back to the client, and one is the future opportunities. So we try to brainstorm past and future opportunities to help the client. Again, like when you do the cross-sell grid, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to find it quite often you don't know your client well enough. So you have no idea of their past opportunities or future opportunities. So it means you need to research your client more. Go for a tea for 2. At least have a lunch with them. Look at the website. Research your client. Understand your client. And then you might have something that you can propose. But when you do the coin analysis, you probably find 2 or 3 hidden gems. So this may be 1 or 2 even. And you get a little epiphany and you think, oh, that's kind of interesting. Maybe they could be interested in this labor product. And in that case, you email them and you propose a T for 3. You suggest, I'd love to introduce you to my colleague from the labor department because you have the UVP. And don't really make the mistake of just slipping into pitching by email saying, hey, my colleague is on CC, they can help you, what do you think? That's too quick. You're going to have more success with a face-to-face meeting. And again, you could also do the coin analysis or even the cross-sell grid and include some ex-clients. If you had some good ex-clients, cross-selling and pitching for T for 3, it's a very good way to recontact ex-clients. So you say, hey, Mr. Client, I helped you last year. Don't worry, I'm not selling anything, but I'd love to introduce you to my good friend from the IP department because there are such and such changes in IP regulations. I think this could impact on your trademarks, your copyrights, your patents that we were talking about last year. So you could use cross-selling and invitation to T for 3 as a nice way to recontact the clients. You really shouldn't underestimate the value of cross-selling. When you go to, like I gave you the example of McDonald's at the very beginning, or about your deadline, when you buy a product, there is, I think, the rule of, which means 25, which means if you buy a €5 hamburger, you can probably cross-sell you up to 25% of that in terms of ketchup or chips. You buy a computer for 100, 1,000 euros, they can probably cross-sell you up to 250 euros with a printer and software. Let's call it the rule of 25. When you're selling products, you can probably cross-sell, and you should attempt to cross-sell, up to a quarter of the value of the product. The rule of 25 doesn't apply to legal services. Like the example in the LTD mistake. Somebody asks you to incorporate a limited liability company. It might only bring the law firm 1,000 euros. But if it turns out that they're also going to buy an office, then you might make 10,000 euros because of the cross-sell opportunity to help them in real estate. So keep in mind that cross-selling can have a much greater value than any primary request the client comes to you about. You have to be careful, of course, when you do a T for 3 or T for 2 or any kind of selling. The best salesman never sounds like a salesman. If you're too pushy, too aggressive with your cross-selling, then this can upset the clients. I think especially the Europeans. So you need to be a little delicate with this. I also think that's why part of the reason the T for 3 succeeds is that the client feels comfortable because you are there and they know you and trust you. And you feel comfortable because you can see what your friend, the other lawyer, is doing. They're not going to say something stupid. And the other lawyer feels comfortable because you're there and you know the client. So the T for 3 has a certain kind of stability, a kind of triangle of trust where everyone is comfortable because there are other people there. Of course, before you can even do any kind of T for 3, you have to be on good social terms, good relations with your current clients. You should be Facebook friends with your clients. I know you might not want to do this, but it's a good idea. There cannot be a separation, especially at partner level, between work and pleasure. That you need to get closer. Maybe you don't need to be friends with your clients. You need to be on a more social footing. You need to know their birth dates. You need to know their hobbies. You need to know a little bit of their background. You need to take them to lunch sometimes, T for 2. And when you do that, when you are faithful friends, then you can move on to T for 3. And keep in mind that if you're going to invite your client for T for 3, you don't say to them, can you do me a favor? Please meet my friend, and he's very good. He's going to sell you something. No. You change it round. Can I do you a favor, Mr. Client? I'd love to introduce you to a favor by introducing my friend from the Labor Department. What they are doing is really cool things. And you can praise your friends and other departments. It doesn't look so bad. It looks really bad if you're so praising yourself. It's a little bit too much. But if you're praising your friends, that looks okay. And you can praise your friends very, very much. And that you are doing a favor by introducing your friends. And don't undervalue your friends. Your colleagues in law firm are very smart people, very good specialists in their areas. Your relationship with the client can only get better by cross-selling and introducing your colleagues. And you will have certainty that things are under control if you do this as a T for 3. So you can actually see what is happening. Maybe at this point it's worth pointing out a thing called client bonds analysis that don't neglect your current clients. You might think that everything is wonderful and that your client is a raving fan. But if you examine the relationship in terms of bureaucratic, organizational, need, direction, and social bonds, if you examine your relationship with the clients according to the 5 different parameters, so how strong is your paperwork, how closely linked are you legally and officially to the client, that's bureaucratic bonds. How close in your organizations do you cooperate together? Do you help each other? That's your organizational bonds. How high is the need for the client for you? If you're doing lots of commodity work, that's not a high need. If you're irreplaceable, working across 10 practices, then you have got high need. What about your direction? How close your values, your culture is, your direction of travel. It might sound a little wishy-washy, but if you both have the same kind of values and directions, it's going to help you. And your social bonds, how friendly are you? If you do a client bonds analysis, it means you rate on yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 according to these parameters. More information about this you can see on the website or email me jjmcveigh@nichedonia.com. I can send you a paper regarding client bonds analysis, but it just means that you can make pentagon where each side of the pentagon, 0 is the center of the pentagon and 10 is the edge of the pentagon, and this would be a pictographic pentagonal representation of your client relationship. If you had 10 out of 10 on all 5 bonds with a client, that would be a raving fan. That would be 100% client satisfaction. That would be called client delight. It means there is no room for improvement. It might actually be physically impossible to get that kind of level. That if you do a real client bond analysis on your current clients, you're going to find that there are some areas where you're lacking. And therefore, if you need to improve your need bonds, direction bonds, or social bonds especially, then you do something about it to improve those bonds, to try and make the pentagon a little fuller. So all in all, I think client bonds analysis is very useful for us to not neglect our current clients. If you have some really good A clients, raving fans, you want to keep them sweet. These guys you should be cross-selling to first and develop further. You have A, B, and C clients. A clients are the ones that pay your law firm the most money. These are the ones that probably can pay you more, so you should cross-sell to them. You don't want to lose your A clients. You want to keep and consolidate your relationship with the good clients. And you don't have a lot of good clients. You might have 80% of your revenue coming from 20% of your clients. So start with cross-selling to them. And all things considered, cross-selling is probably the easiest win, the biggest win for any law firm. If you want to double your revenues within a couple of years, and you can quite simply do that, I think, through systematic cross-selling, if you apply all of the best practices and the best approaches to developing your current clients, you can make a lot of revenue. You'd have to hire more lawyers, I think, as well, which can be tricky. So one of the biggest secrets in business development is you don't really need to do new client hunting. You probably have huge opportunity with your current clients and ex-clients, especially in the area of cross-selling. So my advice would be, start with that and include cross-selling and T for 3 and other activities on your personal business development plan. Encourage your team to do so as well. Good things will happen. Thank you.